I stood there in that sterile room, knowing that in 24 hours, a part of me would be gone forever, and I'd never be able to take it back. Before we begin, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Now, let me tell you a story that will stay with you long after it ends. My name is Harper Reed, and I need you to understand something right now. I'm not a victim. I'm not a hero either. I'm just someone who made a choice that most people will never have to make, and that choice broke me in ways I didn't see coming. It started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are supposed to be boring, forgettable, the kind of day that slips past without leaving a mark. But this Tuesday, I was sitting in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear, holding my daughter's hand while a doctor with tired eyes told me she had 6 months to live. 6 months. Chloe was 8 years old. She loved dinosaurs and hated broccoli. She could name every constellation in the night sky, and when she laughed, it sounded like wind chimes. And now, some rare blood disorder I couldn't even pronounce was stealing her away from me, one day at a time. The treatment existed. Of course it existed, but it cost $400,000. I was a waitress at a diner called Rosie's on the edge of town. I made $9 an hour, plus tips. I did the math in the hospital parking lot, sitting in my rusted Honda, while Chloe slept in the back seat. Even if I worked every single day for the rest of my life, I'd never come close. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of our tiny apartment and listened to Chloe's breathing, too shallow, too quick, and I made a decision that would haunt me forever. I was gonna sell my kidney. Finding someone to buy an organ isn't as hard as you'd think. It's illegal, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But when you're desperate enough, you learn that there's an entire shadow world operating just beneath the surface of normal life. I found a number scrawled on a bathroom stall at a truck stop. Beneath it, someone had written, "Need cash fast? They pay top dollar." I called it from a gas station payphone at 2 in the morning. A woman answered. Her voice was smooth, professional, like she was booking a spa appointment instead of arranging an illegal organ sale. "First time?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "We pay $200,000, half up front, half after surgery. You'll be in and out in 3 days. No one'll ever know." 200,000. It was only half of what I needed, but it was a start. I could find the rest. I had to. "I'm in," I said. "Smart girl. Someone'll contact you within 48 hours. Don't talk to anyone about this. Not your family, not your friends, no one." She hung up. I stood there in the fluorescent glow of that gas station, watching trucks rumble past on the interstate, and I felt something shift inside me. A line had been crossed. There was no going back now. His name was Marcus Webb, and when he showed up at my apartment 2 days later, he wasn't what I expected. He was young, maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that saw too much. He wore an expensive suit that looked out of place in my run-down neighborhood, and he carried himself like someone who'd learned to navigate dangerous waters. "Ms. Reed," he said, extending his hand, "I'm here to explain the process." Chloe was at school. We were alone. Marcus sat at my kitchen table and laid out the details with clinical precision. The surgery would happen at a private facility. They had real doctors, disgraced ones mostly, who'd lost their licenses but not their skills. The recovery would be painful but manageable, and the money would be deposited in cash, untraceable. "Why do you do this?" I asked him. Something flickered in his eyes. Everyone has their reasons. That's not an answer. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You want the truth? 5 years ago, my sister needed a liver transplant. She was 17. We were on every waiting list, but there were thousands of people ahead of us. She died 3 weeks before her 18th birthday." The room went quiet. "After she was gone," Marcus continued, "I started asking questions. Why was it so hard to get an organ? Why did people die waiting when there were others willing to sell? The system's broken, Ms. Reed. I just help people navigate around it. By breaking the law, by saving lives." He met my eyes. "Your daughter has 6 months. How many of those months are you willing to waste on moral high ground?" I hated him for saying it, but he was right. "When?" I asked. "Next Wednesday. Be ready." I wasn't supposed to meet him. That was the rule. Donors and recipients never cross paths. It's safer that way, cleaner. But 3 days before the surgery, Marcus called me with an unusual request. "The buyer wants to meet you," he said. "Why?" He didn't say, but he's offering an extra $50,000 if you agree. 50,000. That brought me closer to what I needed. "Fine," I said. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He was sitting in the corner booth when I arrived, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a face carved by time and privilege. He stood when he saw me, gentlemanlike, old school. "Ms. Reed," he said, "thank you for coming. Please sit." His name was Richard Castellano. He owned 3 car dealerships and a yacht he barely used. He'd been on dialysis for 2 years, waiting for a kidney that never came. "I wanted to look you in the eye," he said. "I needed to know you were real." "I'm real," I said quietly. He studied me for a long moment. "Why are you doing this?" I could have lied, but something about him, maybe the sadness in his eyes, made me tell the truth. "My daughter's dying. The treatment costs $400,000. I don't have it. This is the only way." Richard's expression crumbled. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so terribly sorry. It's not your fault, isn't it?" He shook his head. "I'm buying your kidney because I have money and you don't, because the world is built that way. How is that not my fault?" I didn't know what to say. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a check for $400,000. I stopped breathing. "I'm giving you the full amount," Richard said, "for your daughter's treatment, but there's a condition." Of course there was. "What condition?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You don't go through with the surgery." The world tilted. "What?" "Keep your kidney, Ms. Reed. Save your daughter. I'll find another way." I stared at him, unable to process what was happening. "Why would you do this?" Richard smiled sadly. "Because I've lived 63 years, and most of them were good. But your daughter? She's 8. She deserves a chance to have good years too. I won't be the reason she doesn't get them." Tears burned my eyes. "But you'll die." "Maybe, maybe not. But at least I'll die knowing I did one decent thing." He stood, buttoning his coat. "Take the money, save Chloe, and Ms. Reed, live a life that makes this sacrifice worth it." He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me sitting there with a check that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I should have taken the money and run. I should have started Chloe's treatment immediately, grateful for the miracle I'd been handed. But I couldn't stop thinking about Richard Castellano. That night, I called Marcus. "I need to know something," I said. "How long has Richard been waiting for a kidney?" There was a pause. "Why? Just tell me." "2 years." "Why, Harper? And how long do people usually survive on dialysis?" Another pause, longer this time. "Depends on the person. Some people do okay for years, others not so long. Richard's kidney function is at 14%. He has maybe 6 months, a year if he's lucky." 6 months, the same amount of time my daughter had. "Marcus," I said slowly, "what if I went through with the surgery anyway?"
"What? No. Richard gave you the money. The deal's off." "But what if it's not? What if I give him the kidney and keep the money too?" "Harper, you don't understand. Richard specifically—" "Richard is dying," I interrupted, "just like Chloe. He gave me a gift and I want to give him one back. Can you set it up or not?" Silence. Then, "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "All right," Marcus said quietly. "I'll make the call." The facility was in the basement of an old warehouse on the industrial side of town. Clean, surprisingly. Clinical lights, sterilized equipment, real medical staff moving with practiced efficiency. I changed into a hospital gown and lay on the gurney while a nurse inserted an IV into my arm. Richard was in the next room. We weren't supposed to see each other, but just before they wheeled me in, Marcus bent down and whispered, "He doesn't know it's you. He thinks it's someone else." "Good," I whispered back. The anesthesiologist appeared above me. "Count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8. The world faded. I woke up in pain, not the sharp screaming kind, but a deep bone-level ache that radiated from my side. Bandages wrapped around my torso. Tubes connected me to machines that beeped softly in the dim light. Marcus was sitting in a chair beside the bed. "How long?" I croaked. 6 hours. Surgery went perfectly. You're gonna be fine." "Richard?" "Also fine. He's recovering 2 floors up. Doesn't know it was you." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. "You did something impossible today," Marcus said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I just did what I had to do." "No, you did more than that." He leaned forward. "Most people in your situation would have taken the money and disappeared. You gave away a part of yourself to save 2 lives. That's not necessity, Harper. That's heroism." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd been torn apart and stitched back together. But Chloe would live, and so would Richard. That was enough. Chloe's hair was growing back. It came in soft and fuzzy, like dandelion fluff, and she complained that it made her look like a baby chick. But she was laughing when she said it, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, and that sound, that beautiful wind chime laugh, was the most precious thing I'd ever heard. The treatment was working. The doctors said she had a 90% chance of full recovery. 90%. I clung to that number like a lifeline. We'd moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy, but it had 2 bedrooms and windows that let in real sunlight. Chloe was back in school, telling her friends about the weird adventure she'd had, making up stories about fighting monsters in the hospital. I was working at Rosie's again, but only part-time. The rest of my days were spent with Chloe, making up for lost time. Life was good, but I couldn't stop thinking about Richard. I'd kept track of him through Marcus. The kidney had taken. His body accepted it without complications. He was off dialysis, regaining strength, living. But we'd never spoken again, until one Saturday afternoon when I opened the door and found him standing on my doorstep. "Hello, Harper," Richard said. He looked different, healthier somehow. Color had returned to his face. His eyes were bright. "Richard," I breathed, "what are you doing here?" "I know it was you," he said simply. My heart stopped. "Marcus told me last week. He said I deserved to know." Richard stepped closer. "You gave me my life back, even after I tried to give you yours. Why?" I thought about lying, but I'd come too far for lies. Because 6 months isn't enough. Not for Chloe, not for you. And I couldn't stand the thought that you'd given up your chance just to save us. Tears filled Richard's eyes. "I don't deserve this." "None of us deserve anything," I said softly. "We just get what we're given and try to make it mean something." He pulled me into a hug, gentle, careful of my healing scar, and we stood there on my doorstep, two people who traded pieces of themselves for love and survival. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you," I whispered back. Richard became part of our lives after that. He visited every Sunday, bringing books for Chloe and helping her with her science homework. He told stories about his own daughter, the one he'd lost years ago to cancer, and in Chloe, I think he found a way to heal old wounds. One evening, 6 months after the surgery, Richard asked to speak with me privately. We sat on the apartment balcony while Chloe watched cartoons inside. "I've been thinking about legacy," Richard said, "what we leave behind, and I realized something. I've spent 60 years building a business, making money, accumulating things, but none of it matters, not really. Richard, let me finish." He pulled out an envelope. "I've set up a trust fund for Chloe. It'll cover her education all the way through college, medical expenses if she ever needs them again, and there's enough left over for you to quit working if you want to spend more time with her." I stared at the envelope, unable to speak. "You gave me life," Richard said. "You let me give you both a future." Tears streamed down my face. "You've already given us so much, and I'll keep giving as long as I'm here. That's what family does." Family. The word settled over us like a benediction. Chloe turned 10 on a sunny morning in May. We threw a party in the park, nothing elaborate, just cake and balloons and her closest friends. Richard was there, of course, teaching the kids about constellations and promising to take them to the planetarium next month. I watched him from across the lawn, this man who'd been a stranger a year ago, and now the closest thing to a father Chloe had ever known. Marcus showed up too, bringing a remote-controlled dinosaur that made Chloe shriek with delight. "You look happy," he said, standing beside me. "I am. Terrified, but happy." "Why terrified?" "Because good things don't last, not in my experience." Marcus smiled. "Maybe it's time for a new experience." As the sun set and the party wound down, Chloe ran over and threw her arms around me. "Best birthday ever, Mom." I held her tight, breathing in the smell of sugar and sunshine. and I thought about everything we'd been through, the fear, the desperation, the impossible choice that had led us here, and I realized something. I hadn't just traded my body for money. I'd traded fear for hope, despair for possibility, death for life, and that trade, that was worth everything. The scar on my side has faded to a thin white line. I barely notice it anymore, except for cold mornings when it aches a little, a reminder of what was lost and what was gained. Chloe is 12 now, healthy and bright and unstoppable. She wants to be a doctor when she grows up, specifically a transplant surgeon. She says she wants to save lives like Richard and I saved each other. Richard is 75 and still going strong. He sold his car dealerships last year and started a foundation that helps families afford life-saving treatments. He named it after his daughter and mine. Marcus left the organ trade. He works with Richard now, finding legal ways to connect donors with recipients, advocating for reform, trying to fix the broken system from the inside. As for me, I work at the foundation too. I counsel families facing impossible choices, helping them find resources and hope when both seem impossible to find. Because I know what it's like to stand at the edge of the abyss, and I know what it takes to step back. Every Tuesday, I visit the hospital where Chloe was first diagnosed. I sit in that same waiting room with the antiseptic smell and the tired-eyed doctors, and I talk to parents who are where I was 2 years ago. I tell them my story, and I tell them this. Sometimes the choice you think will break you is actually the one that saves you. Sometimes giving everything away is how you gain everything that matters. Sometimes trading a part of yourself is the only way to become whole. I stand there in that sterile room thinking about that moment 2 years ago when I knew that in 24 hours a part of me would be gone forever, and I smile.
Because I was right. I did lose something I could never get back. But what I found in return, it was worth every star. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. And don't forget, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We read every single one. Until next time, remember, the bravest thing you can do is choose love when everything else demands fear. A message of hope for you. If you're reading this right now and you're going through something that feels impossible, I see you. Maybe you're sitting in a hospital waiting room, watching the clock tick away precious time. Maybe you're staring at bills you can't pay, problems you can't solve, or a future you can't imagine. Maybe you're holding on by a thread, wondering if anyone would even notice if you let go. I need you to hear this. You are not alone. I know it feels that way. I know the weight you're carrying seems too heavy for anyone else to understand. I know you've probably smiled through the pain, pretended everything was fine, and collapsed in private where no one could see. But here's what I've learned, and what Harper's story teaches us. The moments that break us are often the ones that remake us into something stronger. Right now, you might be facing a medical diagnosis that stole your breath, financial pressure that keeps you awake at night, a relationship that's fallen apart, a loss that feels unbearable, a choice that seems impossible, a future that looks nothing like you planned. And you're wondering, how do I survive this? Let me tell you how. One breath at a time, one step at a time, one moment at a time. You don't have to have all the answers today. You don't have to be strong every single second. You don't have to fix everything right now. You just have to keep going. Because here's the truth they don't tell you about dark times. They don't last forever. The night you're in right now, it has an end. The pain you're feeling, it will shift, change, evolve into something you can carry. The impossible situation, it will reveal options you can't see yet. Harper thought selling her kidney was the end of her story, but it was actually the beginning, the moment that brought Richard into her life, that created a family from strangers, that turned her deepest desperation into her greatest purpose. Your breaking point might be your breakthrough.